Recording in progress.
Here.
Ken Demers.
Here.
Dan DeVito.
Here.
Lou Esposito.
Here.
Bob Marinero.
Here.
Dave Pope. Lou Cavallo.
Here.
Joe Duva. Jack McHugh.
Here. I'd like to see Bob Marinero for Richard Antonetti tonight, and Jack McHugh be seated for David Pope tonight. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is public participation. Anybody who wants to speak, please raise your hand. I'll call on you. Let me finish, please. And then please approach the podium, give us your name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please don't be repetitive. No disparaging remarks about anybody or anybody on the commission or anybody in the public or anybody who's an applicant. Thank you. Yes, sir. Go ahead. The gentleman who raised his hand. Oh, by the way, this public hearing, when you make comments now, it's not about the application. That's reserved for the public hearing later on. So this is public participation, anything that's not related to any applications before the commission.
I want to speak on what I believe was going on and my opinion of what's going on.
In what, where?
As opposed to the Sealy property.
Well, yeah, that, you have to wait till the public hearing on that, sir. We'll have that a little bit later on.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anybody else? Participation from the public? Kathleen Kamara. You know her name. Wow.
Sorry. Just in time. Catherine Kamara, 31 Cottage Place. Your website has a document called Public Participation Guidelines, which says that the time limit per speaker is 5 minutes, not 3 minutes that we were doing the last time. So I'm just asking if it can be the 5 minutes because many people were interrupted. They're not really getting to say what they are trying to say, and I don't know, that's what the website says. I had also asked the town to install some sort of a timer where we can see it as well as you can see it so that we can keep an eye on what our time is, because I think that would be helpful. And I have no problem if you're going to limit the time. I just would like to say...
Quite frankly, I was considering eliminating public participation, but we kept it on to give the public an opportunity to speak. You're on.
Well, that's your prerogative. That's fine. Right. I'm just saying that if you're going to time, and obviously public participation is one thing, but your public hearing is something else, and that is if you're going to time it,
correct,
then I would expect that we should be able to see what the time is as well, because, and I would hope that you would have someone other than yourself or any member of the commission watching the time, because it makes us feel that you're not paying attention to us. Instead, you're watching the clock behind us, and I don't think that that's in the spirit of a public participation or a public hearing. There's also a section on conduct of members, and it says, quote, cell phones should be turned off or at least silenced during the meeting. If a member must take a call or a text, he should recuse himself from the room. Those records of cell phone use are available through Freedom of Information if it happens on the dais and it can be seen on the video playback. It would not be considered an unsubstantiated fishing expedition, as some people may claim. So the public really should not be seeing any use of cell phones on the dais because it's actually in your public participation guidelines. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to the agenda. The next item on the agenda is acceptance of the minutes. We have 4 meetings here, December 7th, January 4th, January 25th, the special meeting, January 25th, and the regular meeting on February 1st. Do I have a motion to have these meetings accepted?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll take a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The minutes are accepted. Okay, next item on the agenda is the staff report. Mark?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I put on the first thing under staff report is we had talked, I had been requested last meeting to bring up the topic of revising the regulations pertaining to accessory dwelling units. I've thought about how to proceed on that. So we didn't set a public hearing or anything tonight, but my thought is that the zoning subcommittee is pretty involved, and certainly we'd like to get back on track with performing the work that we have in front of us and getting that done. That the ADU we might work with our zoning. I might work with our zoning consultant to draft out a plan to improve, to revise the accessory dwelling units and bring that to the commission for review, as opposed to maybe burdening the zoning subcommittee with that work. So that was a thought. I wanted to, clarify that or get your consensus or approval on that, and I would move forward with that in that respect. The zoning subcommittee have, because of the holidays, because of breaks, had not met. I think I have, again, maybe a consensus from the committee that we'd like to pick back up in March. We're very well advanced, and I have a sense that the committee certainly wants to at least finish its Tier 1, which is the initial phase of review, and bring that to the zoning commission. So I'll query the members as to getting together in March. A couple of folks have brought up, and it's getting to the season for utilization or for control of food trucks. We've brought up, the issue has been brought up periodically. We've never really found a means to tackle that subject. Again, I'd like to try my hand at crafting a regulation and or some standards and bringing it to you for review. I just recently saw the regulations from West Hartford, and they've managed to craft a fairly good set of regulations that they also actually even have a food truck park, which I understand is quite successful. But they have a good set of regulations that controls the use of food trucks. So since they're been so good at it, I thought I'd maybe use that as a basis for crafting something to bring to the commission again. Just to note, as you well know, we have the PDD, the model PDD regulations on the agenda for a public hearing later on. And in terms of developmental activities, again, I know I keep saying this, but it appears finally that two projects are going to break ground. That being the Bunker Hill Straits Turnpike medical building. I've just gotten an inquiry from the company who's going to demo the buildings on the site. So hopefully that's a start. And similarly, I've gotten inquiries from Watertown, from the engineers for Watertown Farms, which is the service station on Buckingham Street, inquiring about revision of the public roadway to accommodate the proposed development. So hopefully those two projects are going forward with the not so new year anymore. And that's all I have, unless you have some questions for me.
I'd like to ask the commissioners if there's any comments concerning having the accessory dwelling unit regulation drafted by the land use consultant. Danny and myself and Lou are on that subcommittee. Does anybody have any comment regarding that? Is anybody against it?
I do.
Yes.
I have a comment. I believe it was December when we all decided to not adopt the state regulation. And I know we had a conversation saying that we were going to work on it and get it done. It's March 1st, so let's get it done. I'm okay with however you have to get it done, consultant, I don't care, but let's get it done because we agreed that we would start working on that right after the first of the year, and I don't think anybody's looked at it.
Okay, well, so we're going to do. Anybody else? Any other commission members, board members? Okay. I'd like to hear a motion that we would do that we would accept the assistance of the land use consultant for the drafting of the accessory dwelling unit regulations. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Do I have any discussion?
Yes, please. Have we talked to him about what it's going to cost us?
Mark?
Not specifically, however, I do have a pot of money, so to speak, that we've used to engage him for the review of the zoning regulations. So the monies are available in the budget, but certainly I could have him craft a separate, just a separate side agreement, so to speak, so that we can keep control and knowledge of the cost.
Right. So through the chair, I'm not sure I'm not in a position to vote on it if I don't know what it's going to cost us.
Fair enough. Okay, that's a good discussion. I hear a motion to table that motion. All right? You want to make that motion, Kenny?
Sure. I'll make the motion to table your motion.
All right, second that. All right, we'll move on. Mark, find out what it's going to be, and we'll consider it. Fair enough?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. Ditto for food truck parks, same thing. Find out what it's going to cost us if we're going to use him. Thank you. All right. All business, we have a proposed, chairman's report. There is no report. Chairman has no report. All business, proposed 4-lot subdivision, Lake Winnemog Road and Sperry Road, Watertown, submitted by Divesta Engineering for Steiner, Inc. All right. There was a decision by the Wetlands Commission, and we have a proposed resolution prepared by our planning officer.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. The staff came to the conclusion in a resolution for approval based on a couple of factors. The subdivision regulations, similar to site plan, the commission, any P&Z commission is charged with approval of a plan as long as it meets the standards of the subdivision regulations. The 4-lot proposed subdivision does in fact meet the dimensional and other requirements of the zoning regulations. So in that respect, again, it meets those requirements. As you know, the Inland Wetlands Agency has to weigh in on an application before the Planning and Zoning Commission makes its a decision. But the Inland Wetlands decision only has to be received and acknowledged by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it's not because the Inland Wetlands Agency made a determination that they did. It's not. I won't say it's not binding, but it's It's not an automatic outright, let's say, rejection of the subdivision regs. Further, the rationale is, again, since this is a 4-lot subdivision, it puts the onus back on the applicant to make that lot work, in any way that they can. So it allows them to go back to the Inland Wetlands Agency and try to gain an approval. They could maybe reconfigure, lot lines to make it work. The point being that it allows them to go back and revise or to seek their redress as they may. Thirdly, the Inland Wetlands Agency did weigh in and approved regulated activities on lots 1, 2, and 3. So to allow for P&Z to approve the resolution, approve the subdivision, allows the applicant to go forward with developmental activities on 1, 2, and 3, as opposed to not denying the application outright. So those are the rationale. That's my rationale for seeking the approval of the resolution and allowing the 4 lots to go forward. So a note would be put on the subdivision land records that lot 4, while a building lot would not be subject to issuance of a zoning permit or a building permit, specifically until they obtained a permit for regulated activity from the Inland Wetlands Agency. So I think all are covered, and it allows all to go forward, and is probably the best solution that abides by all regulations at this point in time.
Thank you. We have a resolution in front of us.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
You got it tonight.
Right, and I would ask Ken, would you, you could do a synopsis of the resolution, or just make a motion for adopting the resolution as written? As a motion.
So moved.
To adopt the resolution as written?
Yeah, I just,
All right, do we have a second?
exactly what you just said.
Okay, do we have any discussion?
Yes, we do,
Okay.
through the chair.
Yes.
This came to us in August, correct, Mark? It says on here August 3rd, so that's 7 months ago.
Yeah.
4-lot subdivision. When did this start in wetlands? Do you know, have any idea? It had to be prior to August. I'm just trying to figure out why it took this poor applicant, has been around for almost a year to get a 4-lot subdivision approved.
May I? This situation, I recall, when the applicant was in front of us, Ken, was told he had not gone to wetlands before he came to us. He came to us first. And we gave him a caveat that he should go to wetlands first. And he took a shot and put his application on. So we couldn't make a decision until after wetlands made its decision. And the delays here are not the Planning Commission's problem. They're all wetlands delays.
Right, so I'm simply asking if Mark knows why wetlands hasn't made a decision, because I've been around for 18 years and I've never seen us do what we did in this resolution, where we're gonna approve something, but we're not gonna approve something. It's kind of weird.
Through the chair, I could add a little clarity.
Sure.
They did make a decision. They approved 3 lots. Lot 4, they didn't approve because they had concerns about it. So it's brought to us that the 3 are approved for building, the 4th is still withstanding, but we could approve all 4, and if they could straighten out the issues on that 4th lot, then they would have the go-ahead to move forward.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes.
So the Inland Wetlands Agency is not charged with approving lots. That's the purview of the commission, of this commission. They're only they're charged with approving regulated activities, irregardless of the number of lots. So as to why it took a long time. And again, they did need to apply to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Inland Wetlands Agency at least at the same time. They're free to apply theoretically to the Inland Wetlands Agency first, but I believe, and it has been a while, that they applied to both commissions at approximately the same time. All I can say is the Inland Wetlands Agency did have some concerns with some disturbed wetlands that are on the property. It's a former farm field, and they took their time the time that they needed to deliberate and come up with their decision. And of course, P&Z can't act until that happens, and that just recently happened.
Sure. Through the chair, what I was looking for was wetlands is wetlands. I'm just not sure it's a 4-lot subdivision. I just can't understand how it would take so long, that's all.
Gotcha.
I'm in favor of the project. I just don't understand the time frame, that's all.
Right.
If I may, through the chair as well.
Sure.
Mark, do you know what the big issue was with lot number 4?
That's what I just asked.
I mean, I know it's wetlands-related issues, right?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, there was some concern about the separating distance with the wetlands, especially on Lot 4. And the applicant reconfigured some things. They came back and forth. As Mark said, there was an issue about the wetland delineation from the old field that had been disturbed. And the commission brought in Cynthia Rabinowitz from Northwest Conservation District as a third-party review. And this all took time. We went out and did test pits. It just went back and forth. That's what took, so long. I'm not sure exactly what date they submitted. It might have been in September or October. I'm not sure. So it just went back. It just took time. That's all. Things happen. So.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. We have a motion to accept the resolution as drafted. That motion has been seconded. There's no further discussion. We'd like to take a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All against? Okay, this resolution is adopted by the commission. Thank you. Okay, let's see what we got here. All right, we have a continued public hearing tonight for the proposed Sealy Oakville Center Plan Development District submitted by Attorney Franklin Pillacy. I would like to take a moment and go over briefly the rules for the public hearing. If you give me one moment, I have about 13 pounds of paper here I'm looking at. With the lack of finding it, I'll do it by memory. We have, again, no disparaging remarks regarding the applicant or any board members. Limited time to 3 minutes. It may be extended to 5 in the discretion of the chair. Please do not repeat anything that somebody else says, because we've heard it before. This is, I believe, at least the third public hearing on this matter. When you approach the podium, please state your name and address, okay? Speak clearly into the mic. The commission is not obligated to answer any questions. Please don't ask the commission any questions directly. Okay, we can begin with the applicant, Attorney Pillacy.
Excuse me, through the chair, I think we might need to read the public hearing notice.
Okay, well, Carol is going to read it.
For Sealy?
I'm sorry?
For Sealy?
I think that's what it was for.
No, the public hearing notice is further down on the agenda. Sealy is not a new public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Apologize.
That's okay.
This is a continued public hearing. The notice has already been read.
Gotcha.
Franklin.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission and staff. Franklin Pelosi, 235 Main Street, Watertown, on behalf of the applicant. At the last public hearing session, the applicant consented to extend the public hearing until this evening for purposes of preparing and submitting a master plan or a series of master plans that would lay out some scenarios of likely development plans based upon the tenant mix that is ultimately secured for the site. The applicant in that time period has submitted 4 alternate master plans. The idea being, again, to provide you the conceptual layouts that would be likely. But again, nothing can be certain until such time as tenants are secured and an actual site plan is prepared and submitted. The applicant also submitted an amendment to the 2 applications to delete a waiver provision that was contained in both the new definition and in the PDD regulation itself. So those waiver provisions have been deleted. The other item that we'd like to touch on tonight is there's been discussion that the plans submitted to date do not include some site-specific items. And as stated by this applicant, both in the first application and in this application, it's not possible to really be site-specific until such time as actual tenants are secured, tenants' needs are taken into account, and formal applications for site plans can be drafted by professionals and submitted. Everything in the applications before you include direction of the applicant to your site plan regulations and the site plan process. And your site plan process is actually pretty exacting and calls for all of the types of items that have been discussed as perhaps being needed. The applicant understands that these items are needed. The applicant understands that the site plan application proceedings are required. And just to go through a couple of them, Section 8 of your regulations are site plan regulations, and they go on for about 10 pages of all the different requirements that have to be met. And a number of professionals have to be involved on behalf of the applicant to get everything submitted. But the site plan process is set beginning at Section 8.3, and then in 8.5, it talks about a site plan pre-application procedure where meetings are held with town staff and so forth to discuss the specifics of a site plan. And then the application procedure gets a little bit exacting when we get into Section 8.6. And it has to be submitted, obviously, to this commission. The commission has the sole discretion to determine whether a site plan application is complete or whether additional information is needed. And the commission may not render a decision, again, if there's a wetlands, we know that. But the site plan preparation requirements start at Section 8.7, and it tells us all the specific mapping and surveying and layout of the site that has to be included. And again, there are specifics here for the survey requirements and the engineering requirements. Then we get into Section 8.8, which goes on for more than a page of everything that has to be submitted. There's actually 2 pages going on to 3 pages of everything that has to be submitted with the site plan. And that includes traffic. That includes the sidewalks. It includes the walkways. It includes the buffers. It includes all locations, dimensions, height, setbacks, all of these informations. It includes all parking details. It includes all lighting. It includes outdoor lighting. It includes all proposed sanitary sewer water facilities. It includes topographic maps, open space and landscaping plans, development plans if they're going to be developed in phases, stormwater, erosion and sediment, and then there's a provision in 8.9 that the Commission has the ability to ask for additional information if requested, and then there are standards that have to be met in Section 8.12, and the standards themselves go on for a page and a half, and so forth. So all of the types of things that have been discussed as perhaps nice to know, but on this record, they're impossible to know. And then that all has to come before your commission, and all has to be subjected to staff review. You have the ability to use consultants and third-party review, the same as you do with other types of applications. So step one in trying to develop the Sealy site is, in some respects, the most important step because it gives the developer the opportunity to begin seeking tenants. And once tenants are located, that's when the real rolling up your sleeves site plan review gets done. But again, this is step one. Step two is, again, strictly in your purview, which is the site plan proceedings. And under Section 8 of your regulations, those proceedings are exacting and they're arduous for the applicant and the applicant's professionals. But that's when we get down to what tenants are here, what tenants are expected, what tenants' needs are, and then we can do a site plan. So we can't get to site plan until we first have tenants. We can't have tenants until we first have a site that's at least zoned to accept tenants. And as stated earlier, tenants in this economy, they don't want to commit in any manner to a site unless they know that they have a zoned site. And the applicants in this case are experienced developers. They deal with tenants all the time. They have a number of sites throughout Connecticut that they have successfully developed. They have a number of successful developments in other states. And in all their dealings with prospective tenants, they're always looking for an expectation of having a site available to them within 9 months of the date of commitment. And as we've seen, 9 months can go by very, very quickly. So if we have, the applicant has this application, these applications approved, then the next step is to try to locate tenants. And the third step is when all the site-specific information is prepared by professionals and brought to you for review in that site plan process. So again, we urge you to approve this application with the amendments that have been added since the last meeting. The applicant has submitted everything that we were asked to submit from last meeting to this. So again, we urge you to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to speak on behalf of the applicant? Okay. All right. All right, so now we have anybody from the public would like to address this application? Yes, sir.
Frank Mango, 118 Manila Street, Oakville, Connecticut. So as far as I understand, the application will be put in, but we don't know what's going in there. So how do we approve an application without knowing what exactly they want to put into that section of land? Anyone have an answer?
You can't, you don't have, we don't have we don't have any obligation to answer any questions. That's part of the public hearing process. You certainly can ask those as rhetorical questions, but don't expect a response from the commission.
So they're going to propose it, they're going to put in an application, and we're going to approve it, but you don't know what you're approving. I mean, the application has to say, give you some kind of an idea what's going into the property. It's not a carte blanche, I'm going to put in an application, and you're going to approve the application, but you don't know what's going on the property. Are they putting strip joints there? Are they putting a McDonald's? Are they putting a grocery store? Are they putting a hotel? What are they putting there? They're putting an application. Is it relevant to the zoning and to the property? Any answers?
Again, I'll say very clearly, the commission is under no obligation to answer any questions. So don't pose any questions to the commission. You can make your point without questioning the commission.
Okay, so they're going to present to you an application with basically nothing on it, and you're going to say, okay, come back with a site plan on what's going on. So basically, anyone coming here now, there's not going to be any way to question anything that what's going on that property. It's like kind of a waste of our time until we find out what the site plan is. And then there'll be plenty of questions as to, you know, surveys taken, traffic, water flow, all kinds of stuff. But until then, really, it was kind of a waste of anyone's time coming up here now until they put in a plan.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Vera McCarran. It's 167 Riverside Street, Oakville, Connecticut.
I'm sorry, I didn't get
Oh, I'm sorry, Vera McCarran,
and your address.
167 Riverside Street. Sorry, I have a cold, so I apologize. So it's just a constructive criticism, just voicing my opinion. It seems that after reading a lot of the Watertown talks, there has been a lot of like bans being limited at Sunset Grill, noise ordinances put into place. I think that outdoor bans in the Oakville area are also limited to like a noise ordinance of 11 o'clock. So as far as having like a franchise drive-through with maybe a 12 o'clock time spot, I think that's a little heavy since we have so many houses close to the area. It's just my opinion. CVS closes down and Walgreens close down at a certain point, so you don't hear like the loudspeaker. Burger King further down the road actually has, you know, it's spaced out. It doesn't seem that there's a lot of residences, and also the berms behind it create a sound barrier. Further down Taco Bell, it's the same thing. So I would think that there would have to be some kind of limitations on how late this business could stay open, since there are so many people in close proximity to it. It's just a thought. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Brian D'Amelio, 15 Henry Street. This is my comment and my personal opinion. 3 years ago, I bought a house in Oakville to raise my 3 grandchildren in a safer environment from where we used to live before. Henry Street is predominantly a dead-end street and very little traffic. Safe and quiet place to raise my grandkids. 1 year later, these vague plans come up to change zoning and build something on the Sealy property. We were told the LLC was not sure, but wanted to put something in there, and it turns out they knew exactly what they wanted to build. SLR plans from April and May of 2021 clearly showed what their intentions were, all the while trying to bamboozle us. As of right now, on a personal note, right now, my grandchildren and myself, we love to see the wildlife that crosses the Sealy property. the rabbits, the foxes, the raccoons, even the skunks. They marvel at the birds of prey that fly above. And they're mesmerized by the hooting of the owl in a nearby tree. These are experiences they won't forget. I realize that something has to be done with the said property, and I am not opposed to the idea. However, the lies and deceit surrounding these plans leave me apprehensive. The recent SLR plans, which are 4 of them, unlike the one that was given to us tonight, clearly show a drive-through fast food chain restaurant. It clearly shows a 40,000 to 60,000 square foot building on the slab. It clearly shows an entrance exit directly across from my house. This is not only reprehensible and ludicrous, but it's downright unacceptable to me and my neighbors. There has been no traffic study done in the last 2 years to facilitate their intentions on what they want to build. Oakville is a village. We are villagers. We are not village idiots. My 3 grandchildren stand on the corner of Henry Street and Riverside Street to await their school bus. They depart at the same corner as it is. Right now, the traffic speeds by over the speed limit. I shudder to think what it's going to be like if the LLC gets their way and wants to build something there. Again, no traffic study. Continuing on, again, the most important thing to consider is why has there not been a traffic study, especially after seeing these new SLR drawings, those of us that reside surrounding this plot know that all traffic will come to a standstill. It'll be a total snafu. Our roads cannot handle what is proposed for this site. On a separate note, my house is vermin-free, and I wish to keep it that way. A fast food restaurant drive-through comes trash, rodents, and seagulls. Yeah, even seagulls. Picture that. In closing, I would like the commission and everybody attending here to visualize this. You're at the Village Green. You're at a celebration or a solemn ceremony with our veterans at the memorial. It goes something like this. I pledge allegiance to the, welcome to Wendy's, how may I take your order? And to the republic for which it, would you like to supersize that order? One nation under God, that'll be 1498. Please drive up to window number 1. That's ours and your reality check.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Diane Haggis, 53 Hillside Avenue in Oakville. My comment has to do with the consultant. We agreed, the commission and the neighbors that were opposing this because it's so vague and we don't know what would be going in there and we'd live there. So we agreed, the commission and the neighbors, to hire an independent consultant who would come in, speak with Mr. Pillacy and the applicant, I assume, and speak with the neighbors, and then come up with recommendations. You have that report. I don't see the purpose of having an independent consultant if you're not going to weigh heavy on the recommendations of that person. The consultant said very clearly in that report that the commission should look at the neighborhood, that whatever was built should blend into the spirit of the neighborhood. It's very clear in the report. And that the opinion of the neighbors, the people that would have to live it day in and day out, should be weighed heavily in that decision. So I just want to remind the commission that we had an independent consultant report. And it was very clear where he sided after reviewing all of the facts, speaking to as many people as he could, and he was clearly on the side of the residents, in his opinion, and he has done it for a very long time. So I just wanted to remind the commission that we had a consultant, we had a decision, not a decision, we had recommendations from him, and that's something to consider very heavily. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for the public? No, no, you already went at the public, I have somebody behind you I'd like to call. Yes, sir. You'll be next. You'll be next, you'll be next.
David Mangle, 240 Riverside Street, Oakville, Connecticut. I've been in this town 66 years. I know about how this traffic works, and it jams up now. You want to put this, you're waiting for a traffic catastrophe to happen. I looked at all 4 of your plans. You've got one plan of, like Mr. L said, trailer trucks would go up Henry Street. Up Henry Street, he should build his own road. You want me to explain it to you someday? I'll tell you how to do it. Then, you got one plan with the building pushed all the way back towards Ball Farm Road. That's close to them houses. You got another strip with the drive-throughs. Forget about the drive-throughs. If he said the trailer trucks are going to go up there, guaranteed you're going to build a big grocery store. You've got 2 loading docks in the print. One's for produce and one's for meat. That's what the big conglomerate stores have. So, you know, you've got to build your own road to go up there. And originally, it was a buffer to block off Henry Street. So if you cut the grade down about 10 feet deeper than Henry Street, and where the loading dock they have now on Henry Street, Sealy has, cut that grade down too, and then put a berm in between Henry Street and that road. So you could build 2 green giant shrubs on there to block everything off in a serpentine pattern, saw blade pattern. You know, you got to think of the people. Then you got all this water problem. You're going to have to go, I've been talking to him with underground retention basin, bigger than this room. Big black plastic galleys, works like a septic system. Fill up with so much water goes out. Because the water, the pin shot pond, you got problems there. You people want to put more water into a 5-gallon pail when you only got a 4-gallon pail. So you got to fix all these other problems first. And like my cousin told you, we got to know what's going to be put there before anything's going to be said. Because a lot of developers, they get their foot in the door, and then they go bananas. They do everything. But the drive-through, cut out the drive-through. How much money do you need? And you got to infest my town with French fries and seagulls, and just like Brian said with drive-through and all this, forget about the drive-through. Go for at least one, a grocery store or something. But you got to think of the town. And the driveways you have now look like a little kid put them in. You can't come off of Main Street onto Riverside Street by the cleaners there and do a hook turn like that. When the cars come from Davis Street across the Riverside, they come in a lot of cars. Okay. So if they, wait, let me finish. They come to here, how are these cars going to go into there when more cars are coming? They could go in, but how about getting out? You're going to put a light?
Would you like to sum up?
Huh?
You good? Okay, thank you.
So we want to know what's going to go here before anything goes.
All right, got it.
A grocery store, whatever. That's what we want to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine Camera, 31 Cottage Place, Oakville. I do want to say that there's a commissioner sitting right here tonight who commented on Facebook, did an emoji on Facebook, which was a laughing emoji.
Okay.
Excuse me?
This is a comment about a specific commissioner. We don't want to have any comments about specific commissioners. We'll talk about the application here.
Okay. I'll put it on the record that somebody did ex parte communication. Right. Okay, so this is definitely not a PDD. There's a problem here that we're told that we don't know who the tenants are. We don't have any idea who the tenants are, but we want you to allow us to put anything and everything on that property. That's a problem. We can't just say, okay, here you go, you can put anything on there, and then go find your tenants. Why are we even changing the zone? Because if you're going to go out and find tenants, the zone is business commercial. Go out and find business commercial tenants. and then you can do what's allowed in the zone as it is. So this whole thing is a little bit odd to me. If you don't have tenants, why don't you go after tenants that fit in the zone? Another thought on that is there's a February 15th email with Mr. Yaman, and he says that they attempted to engage a traffic consultant now, but they're busy and it would take over 2 months to get a report. Is 2 months really such a long period of time to get a traffic study? So he didn't say that they're opposed to it, he just said it would take 2 months. I don't really think 2 months is all that long when we're talking about a major section of our town. So I would say go ahead and get that traffic study if it takes 2 months. Because the issue, without a traffic study, I would think that the applicants would want a traffic study because they're talking about they haven't been able to configure what's going to go on the property. How can you configure what you're going to put on the property when you don't have a traffic study to tell you how you can, the ingress and egress of the property is going to work? So you can't configure the property. How do you find your tenants if you don't know how this traffic is going to get in and off the property? It would seem to me logical that you need the traffic study first. This is a very, very difficult piece of property. It's not your average piece. It does not have a really easy way to get in and out and feed traffic into an already heavily trafficked area. So I just can't understand why this is not being, a traffic study is not being mandated. And Mr. Yaman didn't sound opposed to it in his email. He just said it would take 2 months. He also said that they're investing over $2 million, but I don't know how you do that when you don't know what you're putting on the property. And then he said it mandates drive-through because virtually every business establishment, medical, food, drink, retail, financial, desires drive-through. I would ask that we get the data on that. If there's data on that, I don't know if that's actually true, that every establishment requires drive-through. And then I just want to really briefly say that today, I had to go over to Target in Waterbury, and I haven't been out that way in a long time. And I noticed two things with this meeting in mind. Number one, on Huntington Avenue, there's a new Popeyes. It's nowhere near a residential area. There's nothing residential around this new Popeyes. And number two, on Chase Avenue, on the right-hand side as you approach the light for Target, I assume it's the city of Waterbury who bought all the houses that were on the right-hand side and demolished them in an attempt to not have driveways that were coming out into this busy area that's now, over the years, developed into having drive-throughs on the left-hand side. You've got, I don't even know if it's still there, Mima's, I don't know, Frankie's, I guess it is now. You've got a Dunkin' Donuts, you've got, you know, a whole lot of things. They purchased all the houses on the right-hand side to demolish them, to have them not exist. Is this what's going to happen in Oakville? Are we going to then, we're going to put this in, and then years later we're going to be buying all of our properties so we can demolish them so it can be a very busy butt end of Waterbury? So I would hope that you would take a lot of these things into consideration over this application and deny it without prejudice and let them come back with a real PPD. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
David Overbaugh, 23 Ball Farm Road. I'm going to read tonight because my mind's going all over the place today. I am going to state, though, I haven't seen one single person in the, year and a half, 2 years, come up and talk for this, agree with the developers. All right, I'm going to try to read this fast. Might be 5 minutes, but. All right, here we are at another commission meeting regarding the Sealy property, fighting for what's right and fair for surrounding neighbors. As I presented in the record this week, comments from Mr. Lombard to the people on Watertown Talks. His words seemed to show that he does not care about the neighbors surrounding this property. They are putting in what they want, and if the commission sides with the tax-paying neighbors who do not want to live next to this filth of a fast food restaurant, Mr. Lombard stated, and I quote,
Mr. Overbaugh.
I'm not calling him out on anything.
Do not disparage anybody.
No, I'm not
Applicant or
disparaging. I'm
commission.
repeating exactly what was out in public.
Okay, please.
Will not disparage anybody. That's not my MO. I lost my train of thought. All right. Mr. Lombard stated, quote, "Be careful what you wish for. Don't leave us with the only option that is not beneficial to the area." What does this mean? Is this a threat? What is this only option he speaks of? No one knows their plans except for them, and they will not share it. They submitted 4 new drawings of what could be with little information besides labeling a fast food restaurant on Hillside Avenue, a grocery store, and an entrance on that narrow Hillside Avenue, and another entrance on narrow Riverside Street just over the bridge. They keep saying it's the PDD. Well, doesn't the traffic study, doesn't the PDD require an actual site plan with traffic study, among many other things? They state that the traffic study is premature. What else would you do? When else would you do a traffic study? After the whole thing is built? What is the big secret? And why do they refuse to work with the surrounding neighbors? Again, nobody wants this, the way they're building it. If you say you are building something beneficial for us, wouldn't you want us to frequent the businesses put in there? A Wendy's or another fast food restaurant will not attract Oakville and Watertown clientele. Let's be honest, it will attract people from out of town, like Oakville area or Oakville Ave area, Angel Drive, Villagewood, Northwood. Do we not have a crime problem already in town? Why put a giant magnet in to attract possibly more crime? I see Mr. Yamen's letter to Mark Massoud where he tried to discredit Mr. Chalder, the professional third-party consultant hired to do the report. A report in which Mr. Yamen and his partners did not like the findings, but I digress. In the letter, Mr. Yamen states they have no tenants lined up. I personally don't believe that for a minute. I think they know exactly who they have. Yet, their rendering clearly state grocery store among the buildings. Now, I highly doubt this will be a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's. That leaves one option because we already have other grocery stores in town. Mr. Lombard already has an association with one grocery store, Aldi's. Again, very few from Oakville and Watertown will shop at this grocery store, and we'll again be pulling in the same clientele as a fast food restaurant. Mr. Yamen said the drive-through is a must. If that is the case, then why do 2 of the 4 renderings not contain any drive-throughs? I can go on, but the commission has heard everything. I'm going to wrap up with a conversation I had with for about an hour with Joe Paletta this past Friday. I reached out to him as a representative for many people who signed a letter addressed to him regarding his original vision for this property that he pushed for. Joe said that he was unaware of the fast food restaurants with drive-thrus. He was taken back by the news. He said this differed from the vision he had worked tirelessly for years. His vision was to have something built, occupied similar to Jack McHugh's place up on Echo Lake Road or what Robert LaFlamme had built on Main Street South in Southbury, where Mercado's and Riverview Cinema is. Something with mixed medical and nice restaurants, small retail or entertainment. He also imagined that the green would be added to and pictured a greenway path that the town's been going after for I don't know how many years to cross through that property, which would be fantastic. In other words, something, wait, I just lost my spot. In other words, something the neighbors and the town could be very proud of. If this zone change is pushed through, I will honestly be forced to move my family from the neighborhood that I grew up in my entire life. I cannot subject them to living next to filthy fast food restaurants, spewing disgusting grease into my home every day, all day long. Never mind having multiple drive-thrus, which was in this morning. As Chairman Antonacci said last week at the meeting, or a month ago, you offered an olive branch to them, and they're not accepting it.
All set?
That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, Robert Marinero, 51 Ball Farm Road. I'm going to be short. Everything's been said already. There's not much more I can say. My backyard runs down to the back of Sealy's, and my concern is the same as everybody else's. I just came from an American Legion meeting. We are concerned about the memorial and the green down on Main Street down there. We're hoping it's not going to be touched. It's been a lot of work done to it to keep it up to where it is. I haven't heard anything going on about that. If they have mentioned it, I have not heard. Like Dave Overbaugh just said, if there was a building put up like Dr. McHugh's, we would love it. You know, that's what we need down there. We don't need fast food, grocery stores, drive-throughs, traffic backed up from Hillside to Ball Farm to Buckingham. And that's just what's going to happen. That light on Main Street can't hold that. It's too much for them. It's going to, you know, the vermin and everything else that are going to be down there for a fast food, the element you're going to start attracting to there, are they going to add more police to the force? Are they going to patrol it more? Are they going to have, you know, patrol cars down there all the time? Probably not. That's all I have to say on it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your service. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Patty Casfelt. I live at 19 Henry Street, Oakville.
Excuse me, I didn't get your name.
Patty Casfelt.
Thank you.
19 Henry Street. I am right near where you're going to put something. Is there any way the town could purchase it as make it a park? That's all I have to say. We could use a park.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Rose Soboleski of 456 Davis Street. I want to refer back to a comment from the prior two public hearings that Attorney Pelosi commented on. He spoke of former applications on other developments that never went forward and lost money for the town by deterring economic expansion when residents had valid reasons to put opposition up and fought back against them. Of course, he wouldn't mention the bright side from any of those deterred developments, but I'll give you two. At the former Watertown Drive-In site, when the mall application was fought and the plan eventually fizzled, it wasn't long afterward when major anchor stores in Waterbury's Brass Mill Center Mall disappeared. And that was followed by its Regal movie theater complex. Quite sad, but that could have also happened in Watertown. But in this case, we were saved from that embarrassment, and I don't know what else it could have been called, but it would have been disastrous. On another bright side, the state of Connecticut has built and opened a Connecticut Transit bus hub at the former Watertown Drive-In site, which accommodates the storage and maintenance of about 98 vehicles, according to their website, for daily operations. They own that facility, and Watertown receives a hefty annual fee. I recall the first windfall being $900 million. So that's a win-win arrangement. Not too shabby. So, going forward, the Sealy property owners behind this current application are not interested in the time needed and the groundwork necessary to establish a PDD, not in the formal way that we are going to propose in the next public hearing. They're very impatient. They don't want to wait for a traffic study, claiming it's premature, which is not true for this property. And at the same time, they claim to have no interested tenants. Now, under the master plan requirements in the drafted...
Ms. Sobolewski, could you wrap it up a little bit? We're running a little bit long.
It's only going to take me another minute.
Let you finish.
My mouth is a little dry, I'm sorry. So, under the master plan requirements in the draft PDD copy that I read, it states in section 5, additional documentation may also be required where the nature and or intensity of the proposed PDD warrants it, and this Sealy property site warrants it to require a traffic study. And that's in the master plan requirements that get filed up front, not in the site plan section that would come afterwards. So that study belongs up front with a proper PDD zone application within the 3 required applications to be submitted and processed together.
Okay, I'm going to...
So my final point...
Okay.
Final point, the current application needs to be rejected. The commission has yet to establish and adopt a PDD regulation, and once that's done, they can come back, reapply, and get everything together that they need.
Thank you.
That's it.
Anybody else wish to speak? Does anybody else wish to address the commission? Anybody else from the public wishing to address the commission? You already talked, Mr. Mango. No? No, you're good. Okay, staff.
Mr. Chairman, I was asked to do a basic comparison with regards to the current status of the application. In other words, what information has been provided up to this point, specifically comparing it with the proposed model PDD regulations that is on the agenda tonight. Just to reiterate a little bit, a planned development district is established by the approval of 3 applications submitted and processed at the same time. A text amendment application with the wording of the change for the master plan documents, a zone change application that specifically locates the planned development district, and a conceptual master plan that shows sufficient detail for the commission to understand and establish the overall parameters of the development. More specifically, the conceptual master plan would ideally provide the following information: an overview of the PDD, the conceptual site plan depicting the schematic design of the site, including identification and general location of proposed uses, existing and proposed building footprints, proposed public and private streets, sidewalks, pedestrian walkways, rights-of-way, parking areas, a landscape plan including location of proposed buffers, information regarding the provision of water, sewer, drainage, and other utilities, and the location of public and private open space or conservation areas. In this particular case, the applicant has recently provided a conceptual master plan containing 4 alternative site plan scenarios. The commission could approve one or all of the alternatives to provide the applicant with flexibility of design so they can market the development to prospective tenants. The plans do not, at this point, detail pedestrian-oriented features such as sidewalks, walkways. They do not provide utility-level features for site development. The generalized landscape plan illustrates but does not quantify buffers or open space. Architectural drawings is the third component of the conceptual master plan. One or more sheets illustrating the schematic design of the proposed buildings and structures. They have provided architectural plans that show the basic style of buildings. They do not provide illustrations or photos of similar buildings. A data table, number 4, a data table regarding the proposed development, including lot area, lot frontage, building setbacks, yards or building separation, building coverage and impervious surface, proposed floor areas or parking spaces. There is a data table that provides parking spaces and parking requirements by the proposed use for the 4 alternative development scenarios. The 5th component is a traffic study estimating the potential traffic generation and capacity of streets within the neighboring zone to accommodate the traffic. The applicant has not provided a traffic study for this project. Last and certainly not least, any additional information that may be required by the Commission to fully understand the nature of the proposed development. So certainly it's within your purview to ask for information that you require and need to fully understand the scope of the project. One more thing I'd like to add, and it's a point that Attorney Pillacy made, and that's regard the current standards and with regards to site plan. So Attorney Pillacy is correct. In Watertown, the site plan requirements are fairly extensive. They're almost as extensive as with a special permit requirements. I'm not quite sure how that came to be, but that is correct. So in a site plan process, if you look at Section 8, they are very, very detailed and do ask for a fair amount of information similar to a special permit. In other towns, it's probably not that way because site plans are generally ministerial, which means that as long as the site plan meets the standards of the regulation, the Commission is bound to approve them. But again, in this case, they are elevated requirements similar to a special permit. The only last thing I'd like to add is that, as the applicant has indicated, it appears that the public hearing will come to a close tonight, and I would just encourage the commissioners to put on the record any concerns, issues, comments that they'd like to include in the record for deliberation when the Commission finally does make its decision. If the information is in the record, it's easier for staff to write a resolution or to assist the Commission in obtaining additional information on that particular item. So just should be on the record during the public hearing, and then we can kind of address that issue afterwards.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, Commission members, do we have any comments from the Commission members? Questions to the applicant? Questions to the staff?
Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Just to put this in some layman's terms for everyone. We're voting tonight on the PPD, the zoning issue, changing that. If it goes through, as we go forward now, the applicants have to provide all the requirements that we need in zoning, whether it's traffic, site plan, water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to get that clear. We're just voting to change the zone or to add a zoning district here.
Well, that's one of the components to add the district. The PDD is, as mentioned, it's comprised of those three components: the text, the location, and the approval of the conceptual master plan.
Any other commissioners wish to speak?
I have a question for the applicant. Have you reached out to the town about trying to incorporate the Veterans Memorial there or the Steelbrook Greenway?
No.
Thank you.
I have a question through the chair.
Go
I heard a lot of folks talking about they don't know what's really going to go in there, but you guys have actually submitted a list of uses, I think, right, of what could be allowed in there as far as, you know, indoor theaters, medical, professional offices, warehouses, you know, gyms. So I think you guys listed what potential uses you guys are kind of looking to get in there, correct? Is that,
Correct.
am I reading that right?
It's essentially all of the uses presently existed in the same zone.
Right, so within that zone, you could have any one of these things in there that you guys have listed. So there is a list that the general public could see what potentially could be going in there.
Correct.
So a lot of folks think that there wasn't a list, but I see one, and I'm okay with it.
That's been there right along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And any other commissioners wish to speak?
Through the chair, I have another question for the applicants. You submitted the four drawings. Are these elevations relevant to those? Are these still the styles that are going to go?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then I have a question for Mark. With the site plan approval, my understanding was, though extensive with the site plan, if there's something that we weren't happy with, we wouldn't be able to disapprove it. I don't know if that makes sense, but like with a special permit, my understanding was you had more say in what was getting done with the site.
Right. It does, admittedly, it does present a little bit of a tension in that site plans normally are, again, very ministerial, very administrative in process, as long as you meet the standards of as long as you meet the applicable standards, the commission, like a subdivision regulation, is bound to approve that site plan. But the requirements that are listed in the Watertown zoning regulations are much more akin to special permit standards. It allows you to ask for additional information. I guess it's, though admittedly unclear as to what the consequences are if one asks for that information under site plan and, say, theoretically the commission denies the site plan. I don't think that's ever been explored as to what exactly that means from a legal perspective or from an appeal perspective. It's a good question, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question to the chair, maybe to Mark. I want to talk a little bit about the possibility of the traffic study. Now, does that get done before we approve the application? Does it get done after we approve the application? And actually, the traffic study itself, could that possibly limit what actually goes into this property if the traffic study comes back in a negative fashion? Does the town have any say about, the traffic study if it's stating that, well, it can only you can only build a so much square foot building on the property for the traffic study. What does the traffic study actually tell us?
I believe that the traffic study would, in its most generalized sense, give everybody, the applicant, the neighbors, and the commission, an idea of what the traffic load might be. So you have 4 potential scenarios that presumably, if approved, would be adopted as part of the PDD. It shows 4 distinct styles or uses, general uses of development. It includes the zoning, the parking table does include the number of parking spaces that are required by the zoning regulations for each of those uses. Not being a traffic engineer, I would suppose that information could be correlated to trips per day and give, again, at least a generalized picture of the traffic flow in and out of the site and an analysis of the load on the streets, on the adjacent streets, and the capacity for them to handle that load. So I think that would be valuable information to have. And generally, it is part of if one were to, again, adhere to the model of a PDD regulation, that is information that would be obtained earlier in the process rather than later.
Yes, anybody?
Through the chair,
Yes.
Mark, I think the point was made last time also, if something is approved, then getting the traffic study after is something that the DOT didn't want to do? Wasn't that made with Starbucks? Wasn't that point made?
Right, that's my understanding. I did reach out to a couple of authorities in anticipation of tonight's meeting to ask just that specific question about providing traffic studies earlier in the process versus later in the process, and the pros and cons of both. But unfortunately, I did not make contact with those individuals. But from speaking with DOT in the past, they indicated, at least on a certain level, on certain levels, that they would prefer to be involved in the process and to be able to have input and feedback into a decision-making process with the municipality, rather than having an approval and then go to them for a review.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other commissioners? Louis?
I do, through the chair again. This is for the developers. I'm assuming when you're looking for a tenant, and let's just say Trader Joe's, they want to see so much traffic. I'm just trying to understand better on how a traffic study will really help you guys or hurt you guys.
I think every tenant that'd be interested in the site is concerned about population count, how many people are within a certain radius of the site. And of course, traffic is one of their key concerns, how much traffic is in the area. They feed off the traffic. When we say create traffic, you're going to have people from Watertown and Oakville that'll be going to the site. I think that Waterbury is adequately geared for all the retail that people would want to go down and go to supermarkets or anything else that might exist on there. But I go on the record to tell you that we have no tenant, and I think that the main reason we don't have a tenant is that we can't deliver within the time frame of what a tenant would want to do. They can come in and say, we want to be there. we want to be open in 9 months, and we can't do that under the current regulations. Most towns now have developed what they call a shovel-ready site, so that when a tenant comes by, you can deliver. And we don't have a supermarket. I don't think we've ever had any interest from a supermarket to this point. I know that our site planner put grocery on some of those early ones. We haven't taken it off. There is no grocery store waiting in the wings. There was no Wendy's waiting in the wings. So I think that, you know, the key thing for us right now is to get a site that we can deliver to a tenant. And I think we'll see tenants come out and be interested in the site. But
would the traffic study be part of what they would need to consider that site?
we need a traffic study and a traffic certificate from the state of Connecticut on this development because it goes over a certain square footage. It's over 200 car parking. There's certain rules that we have to follow, and the state will come in. But to be honest with you, with what the traffic conditions and the road conditions are right now, you can't widen the roads there. You'd have to take buildings out. You'd have to, you know, there's certain things that we have to live with, the certain traffic conditions. But in my 40 years of developing real estate, I've never had the state of Connecticut come in and stop a development because the restrictions that are imposed by current conditions. We may have to put a traffic light in. As I did at Starbucks, we completely redid the entire intersection.
Thank you, John, for being honest with us.
And I would go further to say that the site plan that was approved had about an 18 to 20 car queue. And because we had the people in the neighborhood were concerned about fumes going up to certain areas, we moved that building to meet the neighborhood's concerns. And now you have a 14 car queue that during COVID went out into the streets because during COVID, people preferred to go through a drive-through. Drive-through, I think that people's concerns about drive-throughs have really no, especially when it's an interior lot, it doesn't affect traffic whatsoever. If you have any restaurant there, the things that I've heard people say here about the odors and there might be vermin and all this stuff, any restaurant, you always have that chance of having that, but if it's maintained properly, you're not going to have any of that.
Thank you.
So John Lombard, 4 Merivyn Lane, Prospect, Connecticut.
Any other commissioners?
I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone's concerns here. You know, I listened to it and we've exchanged on these Facebook blogs. It's a lot of baloney because what's happening is you come in with half of the information and they present things that just aren't true. You know, would we like to have what Dr. McHugh has? Absolutely. Bring us the tenants. We love to have medical. We love to give them exactly what they want. We don't have anything now because we don't have any approvals.
Any other commissioners have any comments? I would like to, I have a couple questions. What I'd like to do is go through these 4 proposals and talk specifically about each one. And I'd like to take the top one, which shows one large building with 40,000 square feet, and then 20,000 square feet. And 40,000 square feet says future building expansion. And I'd like to ask some questions. Where is the pedestrian walkway? And where is the crossover if there's a walkway over the entrance to the site?
You have it up on the screen so we can see?
I don't know if I can do that. Do we have, how do we do that? Yeah, we could, it was, yeah, sure, hold on. You know what, I'd like to call for a brief recess, okay? 10-minute recess, and we'll continue. Thank you.
No,
yeah.
we have that. We still have that easel?
He's gonna be a pull it on the screen.
Applicants bring those in.
If he needs me to sign
tractor trailers go up and down Henry Street.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's how they go.
Yelling over to you.
I don't think
Right, very nice. Okay, that's plan number one. I'd like somebody from the applicant to discuss the plan. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, what we were asked to do, all these are designed to show potential locations and sizes of different buildings that could go onto that site.
Excuse me, Mr. Yeaman, I should have asked before, could you come to the mic, please, and state your name and speak there and turn it on?
Joseph Young.
Little button there, Joe. That's it, you had it.
Joseph Yaman, 394 Watertown Road, Middlebury, Connecticut. So, Mr. Chairman, we understood that the commission would like to see general layouts, conceptual types of layouts that could fit onto the site. So we went back to SLR, and we had them create 4 types of conceptual designs. And that's all these are to reflect. It's a 10-acre site. These are generally the types of the size of the buildings, general locations of where the buildings would go, because as I believe the commission is aware, there are certain no-build areas and certain non-disturbance areas that prevent buildings from being in certain areas on the site because of the environmental land use restriction that was required because of the contamination that was on the site. So this is just merely a way to show different types of layouts that could go onto that property. The architectural renderings, we're committed to that Georgian colonial type look, and we can, when we ultimately hopefully have a full site plan to present to the board, it will show the means of egress and ingress, the sizes of those, the locations of where they are vis-a-vis the corners. It'll have pedestrian walkways. It'll have a detailed landscape buffer plan, everything that would be required pursuant, I think you said, Section 8 of the zoning regulations. This is designed just to give people a general understanding of the way different buildings could be laid out on the site.
Okay, all right. The commission has in front of it tonight, later on, a proposed PDD regulation that was suggested to us recommended to us by the land use consultant.
Yeah, I mean, the land use consultant merely took a PDD regulation that was used in, I believe, Brooklyn, Connecticut, took those pages out of that zoning regulation, and stapled it to an appendix, made it an appendix to his study. That study still referred to a building that's no longer on the site. Didn't make any sense. Didn't have any real understanding of the environmental issues with the site. Did not reflect that I had personally re-given him certain conceptual layouts for the site. So we had spent a lot of time with this new regulation. As you know, the prior PDD was withdrawn. A new PDD was drafted. It was run by Mr. Massoud. It was run by attorneys Jessel and Strube, who commented upon that text. We incorporated all of their comments that they wanted onto the text amendment and reapplied. So we've spent the time and we spent the money, and this is the application that we're comfortable with as the applicant.
This one doesn't address any of what our proposed PDD regulation would be asking for, because it does not show. Does it show? I should rephrase that. Pardon me. Does it show pedestrian walkways?
I will agree that this conceptual plan does not contain any of the requirements that we will have to provide when we submit our formal site plan. It's kind of obvious.
Yeah,
This was just something to give people some ideas of the types of buildings, sizes, and locations on the property. Nothing more, nothing less. We don't have anyone interested in that site. We've brought the site to Trinity, St. Mary's, United Health, Hartford Healthcare. Not interested. So this idea that we have all these tenants, it's just not true, no matter how much you say it.
We believe you, we believe you. But are you familiar with the plan of conservation and development?
Yes.
What do they recommend? What is their?
Well, as we know from the first application, the plan of conservation development was made part of that first application, and the Watertown Economic Development Commission reviewed the text amendment in light of the plan of conservation development and said it fit. And that first application passed, I think, unanimously.
So let's talk about the first plan. You have a possible 60,000 square foot building?
Yeah, that's what can go. SLR has kind of laid it out there. It's a conceptual plan. I don't know how to say it any differently.
Okay, and it'll be, look like this?
That's the architectural style we'll commit it to, but we're going to be required to submit those renderings with the formal site plan.
Okay. And then your second one has more of a rectangular building than a square building. Again, it's 60,000 square feet.
Yeah, again, purely to give people a flavor of the types of things, buildings that can go onto that site and where they can be located.
Yes, yes. I'd like the commissioner comments. Does any commissioner have any comments on the first one or questions for the developer?
Through the chair?
Yeah.
So the concepts that you're putting forth could be any one of them. I just don't want to get hung up on 60, 20, 40. That's the size you can put in.
Right.
Okay, it may be 4 stores of 10 or 8 of, whatever you get for a tenant.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not.
It was just a way to give different.
That's what you could
a flavor of what these, yes, okay, what square footages could fit on that site and generally where they could go.
Thank you.
Nothing can really go in this area near where one of the speakers was concerned about the disturbing the memorial or the location of that. Well, we can't build in that area. So the only thing we would put in that area is parking that they could use when they have events at that memorial. So there's not going to be a building on top of that memorial or anything like that.
If Ukraine gives us a Russian tank, could we fit it down there?
Yeah,
okay.
There's enough room.
I just want to check.
There's enough room.
Can't resist. Questions?
Through the chair, I had a question.
You might.
Oh. Sorry. Through the chair, I had a question.
Can I show you one thing?
No.
What is going on?
No.
How would you like your freaking house?
No.
Where it's going up Henry Street?
No. You're out of order. You continue that, you have to be removed from the room. Public had their opportunity to speak. Show respect to the applicant and the commission. Thank you.
On the drawing.
Yes.
We have park and generation required 240 spaces, but provided 370.
Yeah.
Would we knock that down, or is there a reason that we have? I just look at this and I see an awful lot of asphalt.
That's just a conceptual plan. If you wanted less parking, I don't think it's a big deal. Okay. It saves us money.
Right.
Usually we don't get those kinds of requests. I'm serious.
Ken, you had some questions before.
I only had one simple question on this one. I mean, but I alluding to what Bob had said earlier, I mean, you really don't know what you're going to get. So you don't know if you're going to have a delivery van or a box truck or an 18-wheeler. You just don't know what you're going to get. So we were talking about the egress onto Henry and from Riverside Street, trying to figure out how. But we don't know what.
We don't even know
so
if those
it
are really
doesn't
going
matter.
to work, because SLR is going to have to engineer those ingresses and egresses.
Right.
But in full disclosure, we showed some different conceptual plans so that people can see them.
Are there any other questions on 1? Go to number 2. Of course, we don't show, there's a lot of things that we don't show on these, right? We don't show screening. We show setbacks. We don't show any, we don't have numbers here. We don't show walkways. What's this?
Hold on, I thought Attorney
Let me just ask you a
Pillis.
question.
Okay.
In the front, Attorney Yeaman,
Okay.
there's a green area. What does that represent?
Show me what you.
Okay, the bottom of the concept, all the trees.
Riverside Street.
All along, parallel to Riverside Street. What is that area?
Parallel to Riverside Street. That's what exists currently.
Right, okay.
Okay, so that's the current, that is superimposed on what those trees are there now.
Okay. Okay, so you're gonna leave that area alone. Where is the environmental easement on this piece?
The area where you come up through Riverside to the, I guess would be to the north of that 8,000 square foot building, and to the, I can't read what that is, it's 20, that extension, to the west, to the southwest. That area, that parking area there.
The parking area?
That parking area, those buildings right in there.
To the north of this building?
To the north of the 8,000 square foot building, and then, well, where the driveway pulls in, off of Riverside, all that parking area there is subject to the environmental land use restriction.
Okay, thank you.
That's why no building can go there.
Okay. Commissioners, any more questions?
Yeah, through the chair. You know, Attorney, there's a whole thing, the cart and the horse and the cart. I understand exactly where you're coming from. These renderings are really worthless.
Yep.
And the reason they're worthless, because you don't have tenants.
That's right.
And you have no idea what your tenants are going to do.
That's right.
So if you don't have a tenant that's going to fill up a 40,000 square foot and they want a standalone 10,000 square foot building, it's not going to look anything like this.
Absolutely correct.
So you're not going to be able to come to the commission until you get tenants and then come with a certified site plan, which Attorney Pilsey went over, and you have rules and regulations in that site plan that you have to follow.
Absolutely.
Which include traffic studies, which include setbacks, walkways, egress, ingress, all that you're talking about. So these, you know, when I saw these renderings, they're worthless.
Yeah, I agree.
I get you can actually see buildings on the site, but they're probably never going to even look like that.
Absolutely correct.
So, I mean, we can be here all day long talking about the setbacks, the trees. The trees look pretty on here, by the way. I do like the fact that I really like our, you know, I'm a supporter of veterans.
Right.
And we have a very beautiful veteran area, and they have a lot of events there for Memorial Day, and these people died for us.
Right.
So the fact that you're saying right now that you're not going to be putting, because you can't put buildings right smack dab where they're going to have their.
We anticipated they would want that for parking for their events.
And that's a home run. Thank you very much. I appreciate
And I'll make that representation right now on the record, and it could be a requirement.
Well, if you're a man of your word, then that's great, because I feel strongly about putting something and just respecting our veterans that died for us.
It's only going to benefit them, this development, because you won't have the parking on the street.
So I'm not really sure why we're even looking at these buildings.
Because you guys asked for
I get it.
conceptual
I
drawings.
understand. And we can see them now. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mark.
if I may, just to answer Mr. McHugh, actually the purpose of the conceptual drawings is that they would be approved as an integral part of the PDD because, and maybe particularly to this site, there only are so many limited ways to fit buildings onto it, and presumably these show the 4 best scenarios that the applicant is able to come up with their engineers that realistically work. So they would be, and the commission would be committing to one of these 4 scenarios, at least in terms of the PDD. So if something changed dramatically or significantly in terms of a layout, then that would be, in essence, reauthorized under a probably under a public hearing process, because the purpose of getting these approved now under this public hearing process is that when they get to the site plan, which does not include a public hearing, then these would be, as long as one of these 4 conceptual plans carried forth to the site plan, then there would be not the need for a public hearing, and they'd be able to, in essence, streamline the review at that point.
Through the chair. To be clear, Mark, this was the idea to get them to a point that it is shovel-ready, right? That we would be able to approve one or several of these, and then they would be able to move forward quickly.
Correct, and yes, and the point was made by the consultant that the commission could approve conceptually any number of plans. You could say, I like all 4. You could say, we don't like number 1. We'll approve 2, 3, and 4, or whatever is agreeable to the commission. But they would have some full force and effect, again, in terms of a public hearing process. And that, once those are approved, the site plan process goes forward without public hearing, and then more of that ministerial review process.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners, any other comments? I personally would like to see a master concept plan that showed the details of the master plan, and then the configuration of the buildings could be anything within that, okay? That we have it, we can approve it, and you're good to go, and you'd be shovel-ready, okay? I appreciate these layouts, but, you know, I'd like to know a little. Have you had a chance to look at the PDD regulation that is on the agenda tonight?
Yes, I did look at it, but we're moving forward with our application.
Okay, I appreciate that. Any comments about that PDD regulation?
I think I commented that we spent a year and a half on these regulations with the assistance of the Planning and Zoning Department, with 2 town attorneys. So we're comfortable moving forward with that text amendment.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners on number 2, number 3? Any questions on any of these? Okay. Any comments, staff? All right, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Any discussion?
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
I think we have a unique opportunity before us where we're looking at a project that truly redesigns our downtown Oakville. And I think it's important that we have enough details in front of us to truly understand what's going to be done, even if it's not what tenants will be there, what the construction of the buildings is like, what the materials are like, the pedestrian access ways. I would have liked to see the green combined into this somehow, Steelbrook Greenway. These are all parts of downtown, and I think it should be something that benefits the residents, not something that kind of seems to stand alone. And some of them, to me, look like a sea of asphalt. Mr. Pelosi had spoken about Mr. Mecca, and some of his designs were award-winning. And from what I see so far, I'm not getting that feel from this. And I would love to have something in Oakville that is award-winning.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
Just quickly through the chair.
Yes.
I think what they're asking for is, if, in general, is they don't have a tenant, so it's hard for them to give us hard specifics. They still have to bring a site plan, correct?
Well, yeah.
I'm just asking.
What our PDD regulations would do, what our proposed regulations, would allow them to configure their interior of this development based on the tenancy that the people that are interested in being tenants. Right. And that would be just site plan approval, be shovel-ready. But I'd like the master concept plan to have all the details of the, the traffic and the pedestrian walkways and incorporating, all these features into the, so we know what we're approving, and we know it's gonna be that, and whatever's inside, it can be adjusted to the requests of the tenants. That's the RPDD regulation. Any other comments? Commissioners? All right, we have a motion on the table to close the public hearing. It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? The public hearing is closed. Moving it along, we have a choice here we have 65 days to make a decision. I don't want to wait until 65 days, certainly. But we do have some amendments that came in today. We have a lot of questions. Commissioners may want to consider it, so we can either vote on this matter tonight. I think there are some things in the proposal that are different than the one that we approved last time, such as multiple drive-throughs. I think that I would like to hear a motion to table this and to make a decision until possibly the next meeting. Can I hear a motion for that?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a discussion on tabling this vote tonight. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Can we do a poll, please?
Yes. Mr. Antonacci?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Demers?
Aye.
Mr. DeVito?
Aye.
Mr. Esposito?
Aye.
Mr. Marinero?
Abstain.
Mr. Cavallo?
No,
I'm sorry?
no.
No. And Mr. McHugh?
Aye.
All right, the matter is tabled. We have, I count 5 to 1.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes. You have 5 ayes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's tabled. Next item on the agenda is site plan review, 56 Echo Lake Road.
Good night, Lenny.
Well, but sure. Good night, Len. Len, great guy.
Huh?
He's a factor. Oh, you think a great guy? He's a great guy. He is a great guy. Yeah, he's a gentleman. He's a pleasant guy. we're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Why can't we just say that?
Thank you.
Why can't we just say, put a traffic study, come back to a complete plan?
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
The site plan review for 56 Echo Lake Road, Limited Partners and LP and MR LLC. Site plan application to convert 8,456 square feet of existing industrial space to residential use. Staff?
Mr. Chairman, even though the the agenda says consider with staff resolution, I regret to say that we do not have a resolution tonight. The town engineer did write a letter with some concerns about parking and stormwater drainage, and through an oversight, we neglected to pass that on to the applicant. So there are some outstanding questions that were posed that ought to be addressed, and I unfortunately just informed the attorney tonight, so we will pass that information to him tomorrow and let the applicant respond to that with your indulgence.
Okay. Is this site plan possibly handled in a ministerial manner by the land use, your office, your administration office?
Still the pre-existing situation
Yeah.
here.
I think we've already considered the major question of one building versus multiple buildings for the use. That is this application, isn't it?
That was certainly one of the pressing questions, at least in the beginning, and we've settled that part of it. It's up to the commission. If you are happy to or comfortable to do that, we certainly can do that. And if there's any questions or concerns, we certainly could bring it back to the commission. But if it goes,
my concern is I don't want to unduly delay an applicant.
Right.
If it's a simple thing, that's only my concern. I mean, you'll have to wait till the next meeting.
Right.
So, is the applicant present?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Applicant.
The applicant, I concur with the chairman's instincts here to approve it, subject to staff being satisfied with the concerns of the town engineer. That sounds like the way to go. Again, one more comment. This is an established site. It's been there for.
Right, got it. Any comments any thoughts, discussion on this? To do that? Any discussion? Do I hear a motion for, Danny, you want to say something?
I was going to make a motion.
Yes. Well.
Yeah, you got the magic touch.
Yeah, the easy touch.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to move forward with what you stated.
All right, there's a motion on the table.
Second.
To approve this, subject to review and acceptance by the land use administrator and the engineering department. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, so.
Okay.
New business, we have a public hearing. Carol, would you please read the notice?
Yes. Town of Watertown Planning and Zoning Commission legal notice. The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Watertown, Connecticut will hold a public hearing on a proposed model plan development district on Wednesday, March 1st, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 61 Echo Lake Road, Watertown, Connecticut. The purpose of the new regulations are intended to permit modification of the strict application of the standards and provisions of these regulations to accomplish the purposes set forth in the Plan of Conservation and Development in accordance with Section 8-23 of the CGS, be flexible to allow for innovative design techniques, accommodate uses and encourage creative approaches to development, promote economic development to meet community needs, and result in a development that demonstrates a high regard for design that is compatible with the historic, cultural, and geographic qualities of Watertown. At this hearing, interested persons and written communications will be received. Copy of the proposed regulations are in file in the Planning and Zoning Office, 61 Echo Lake Road, Watertown, Connecticut, and in the office of the Town Clerk, 61 Echo Lake Road, Watertown, Connecticut, between the hours of 8:30 and 4:30, dated in Watertown, Connecticut, the 16th day and 23rd day of February 2023. Ken Demir, Secretary, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Carol. This is, in front of us now, gentlemen, we have the proposed model plan development district zoning standards. This was prepared by the land use consultant. And this is a regulation that we would adopt, ourselves adopt it. We would write our own regulation. And then applicants could come in under this regulation. And we wouldn't have to deal with, this would cover us, and we would have a standard to abide by in the future. I'm looking for comments from any members of this commission on this regulation. Our staff, feel free to speak up also. I'll go to you first, Mark, on these regulations, and you tell us what your recommendation is and why, please.
As you indicated, these proposed model regulations came about as a result of the receipt of the previous application, known as the Sealy application, and it gives the commission the ability to shape future PDD concepts that may come to the commission. We had tailored some sections of the model to better fit Watertown, to better fit in terms of the references to the POCD, and the only thing that's really outstanding at this point is you'll see there are some specific section sites missing. So the model regulation will point to section so-and-so, and we do need to fill those in so that they correspond specifically to the current regulations. And of course, those will change in the next couple of months as the sites to the new regulations are put into place. But all in all, they're as suggested, as recommended by the land use consultant.
Thank you. This isn't a normal applicant in front of us for a public hearing, but the public is here. So I welcome comments from the public to address this PDD regulation. Does anybody have any comments? Yes, ma'am.
Catherine Camera, 31 Cottage Place. I think it looks good. I like a lot of it except for one area, and that is section 5. Sorry, let me look at this. Under 5, requirements for master plan submittal, and then it's number 5, the additional documentation. I know this is basically for Brooklyn, Connecticut, and I just think that Watertown's a little bit different. I'm not sure that it should say the following documentation may. I think it should be shall also be required. I think a traffic study is needed on any PDD in Watertown because we have extreme traffic issues in Watertown and Oakville. However, if you didn't want to go with just making that one set it aside on its own, that it should be required, that whole section 5 needs standards. It would lead to appeals because it doesn't have any standards. So in other words, it should say something like the following documentation shall be required by the commission for PDDs over 2 acres or with buildings over 20,000 square feet or something with a standard there so that you could apply to it why you would be, you should be requiring that. Otherwise, it's again, it's something that's vague and leaves it to the discretion. And as we probably have learned by now, it's not a good idea to leave anything up to the discretion of the commission. It needs to have standards. So that's the only section that I saw that indicates something that needs a little bit firmer language. Otherwise, I thought it was. I think it's a good idea, and I appreciate the work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to be? Yes, yes.
Again, Rose Soboleski, 456 Davis Street, Oakville. I agree, as Catherine had said, and I believe you and the town will gain great respect by following the advice and the report of the land use professional that helped develop this, that you plan to put in place, that you've written up, Mark. And I only say that because going through the prior public hearing, Attorney Pillacy had his own PDD regulations kind of written up, and they're very different from what you're proposing, and I hope you go along with what your land use professional, Glenn Chalder, recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, didn't I see something in someplace about more than 5 acres or 5 acres or more? Someplace in all this grading material?
I thought it was in the beginning.
Yeah. And I know I saw something that said that.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, that might have been in the Sealy PDD, because I do also recollect an acreage requirement or an acreage standard.
It would be difficult to adopt a standard like that for PDD. Let's have a discussion on that. First of all, if any other members from the public want to make any comment? All right. Commission members, discussion.
Through the chair, I don't know that it should be tied to acreage, but I was thinking maybe tie the additional documentation to parking spaces, because you could have 16 acres and somebody just wants to put up a little shop, and we'd be making them jump through hoops for just a little location.
Right.
But maybe something that's more intense based on parking spaces.
Okay. Any other ideas? How would that work, Dan? Give me an example.
Say you had something the size of Sealy, you have 10 acres, but they bought it and they just want to put a little shop there that's going to have 30 parking spaces. To require them to jump through the hoops of additional documentation for that would seem a little over the top, whereas something larger that has 200, 300 spaces.
Well, why don't can we do a combination, like a size of the lot and a parking space combination? That makes sense. But Ken?
I was looking at which section he was looking at.
Right.
I agree, Ray. Maybe we could have a combination of square footage and parking.
Yeah.
Yes, through chair. You would, a combination of square foot and parking, well, the parking goes along with the square footage, so that would be kind of, I think he'd be talking about, between the size of the lot and the square footage, but I think it should be on this, maybe just only on the square footage, because if a lot, I mean, let's say somebody has a 50-acre piece of property and 40 acres of it is wetlands, so I mean, that it's gonna be on over the size of the property, that's gonna make us go to a different area. It should be just maybe on square footage of the buildings. My thought.
Wow. Mark?
Mr. Chair, I was just discussing with Paul Benevich. There is a category that trips a review by STC. It's called a major traffic generator, and it's over 200 parking spaces or
100,000 square foot of building.
100,000 square feet of building.
Or
either or. I mean, possibly that's a criteria that one might use.
Well, the one that we had in front of us tonight didn't show 100,000
Yeah.
square feet.
It did not.
No, but the parking spaces definitely kicked it.
Was it 200 parking spaces?
Yeah. I think it's one or the other. I'm not sure about the square footage. I know it's
200 parking spaces?
370.
Yeah, they had almost twice that. Yeah, they
All right.
showed,
So it was, say that, what the trip was again?
It's called a major traffic generator, and it'd be 200 parking spaces or 100,000
We
square
believe it's
feet.
100,000 square feet or more, but it's either or one of them
Either
at least
or.
kicks it into a major traffic generator reviewed by the State Traffic Commission.
If you were tying, presumably, the traffic study to the,
Any comments, anybody, any commissioners comment on that? Thoughts on that? Sounds reasonable to me. The 200 parking spaces seem to be PDD-ish. Thoughts? Bob?
I'm okay with it.
How's UConn doing? Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
I think it's a little high, but.
All right, let's
cut it down.
Pardon me?
I think it's a little high. I think we cut it back a little.
What's a little high?
You think it should be like
100,000?
less,
Yeah.
like 150 or something
Yeah.
like that?
No, he's saying the building size, not the parking lots.
Right, I thought the parking was relevant to the building size.
Yeah.
So if 100,000 equals 200 something square feet, then parking, then I think that's a big unit. I think we cut that back.
You're talking about 200 parking spaces as triggering
100,000.
PDD or 100,000, whichever,
Yeah.
if it meets either criteria, would
Right.
have to be a PDD. What
Right.
do you think? What's your thinking in that?
I'm thinking we cut it back to 50,000 square foot building. Too small? To trigger PPD. I'm not saying they can't do it, but to trigger a PPD.
Can I tell you something? I'm looking at my phone, and that's for state highway system. So I think it's different.
Right, okay, but thank you.
I thought we were only speaking, through the chair, sorry.
Yes.
I thought we were only speaking about the additional documentation. Because, as said before, you do have to have a specific that triggers that. It can't be because we feel like it.
Right, exactly.
So-
Exactly.
But I'm sorry, I thought you were saying before you wanted to limit PDDs to only
Well,
that
you know,
size.
The PDD is, it does say, depending on the nature and/or intensity of the proposed planned development district. So, do we want to be more specific on that and give it a specific trigger, okay, or not?
I would
That's really
say,
the question.
through the chair, I would say no.
Okay.
You just don't know what you're gonna get. I mean, if you have a limit on here and somebody wants to do a PDD somewhere and they have this wonderful idea, and however, the building happens to be too big, so it doesn't work, you just turn them away?
Right,
Or-
yeah.
I mean, these are meant to be changed anyhow.
Yes.
So it doesn't, I'd leave it alone.
Through the chair, just to clarify, it's not it's not to stop a PDD from happening. It's just saying if you're gonna do a PDD and you're over the 200 parking spots, then you have to do the additional documentation. So it's just requiring additional documentation when it's a larger scale PDD.
Mandating it.
And what do we say, I think Paul alluded to 100,000 square foot building would require 200 spots. Is that what you said, Paul?
It's or.
It's either or. Usually a smaller building would reach 200 spaces.
You know what, we don't, my concern here is that I don't want to make a trigger that, I want the discretion to have the requirement of these additional things, even if it's not triggered by 200 parking spaces or a 100,000 square foot building.
Yeah.
And this is essentially legislative in nature for our function, okay? And we have discretion when we deal with legislative matters, okay? And I don't think that's going to be a problem in terms of vagueness because it's legislative in nature, okay? And my concern is that if we get something slightly less than 200 parking spaces or slightly less than 100,000 square feet, but it's an intense use for some reason, we would like to have the option of asking for this additional documentation. That's
to make the threshold lower, that's all.
That's my opinion. And I think the problem we're trying to write, and I appreciate your comment, and it's an intelligent comment, okay? But when you try to write anything, any kind of statute or any kind of regulation, and you start to write it in black and white, everything, and you eliminate discretion, you give an applicant a path around doing something, okay? All the codes, all the statutory codes are a blueprint to avoid doing things, to plan not to do things, okay? With discretion, you eliminate that, and it gives us, we have more control of things, all right? If you say, for instance, if you say you have to have more than $20,000 worth of debt to file a bankruptcy, well, people will go out and get $21,000 worth of debt, and then they'll file, okay? So that's why I don't like to be so black and white and, in terms of these things. And especially in legislative, we do have that discretion, and we exercise that discretion. So I don't think we should amend that, although the point is well taken. Anybody else?
I agree with that.
I second that agreement.
All right. So we have a motion on the table to adopt these regulations. Okay, do we have a second on that motion? I'm sorry. Did we have a second? Did we have a motion to adopt it? Can I hear a motion to adopt this regulation?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion on adoption of this regulation? Any further discussion? Hearing none, can we have a vote on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Our PDD regulation has been adopted, as stands.
Good job.
Okay. All right, moving along, all right? We have a site plan review, special permit number 2023-01, AEPM International, Sabrina Signor. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I don't know. I'm not sure myself.
Okay. Signore, all right? 1125 Main Street. Yes, sir. Please.
Hi, my name is Michael Marcinek. I'm a partner at AEPM International, 241 Main Street, Ansonia, Connecticut. I'm representing the owner, Sabrina, 1125 Main LLC. She's requesting the old Napa Auto Parts store that was right next to her Nonna Lucia restaurant to modify the site plan to read mixed-use commercial instead of just commercial. She wants to put 2 or 3 residential apartments on the upper floors. So my request is to come in with a change in use for that property. The plans that were submitted to you include changes, really minor changes to the exterior front, creating 2 storefronts, 2 different small storefronts of about 1,000 square feet each. The whole building will be reskinned, new windows put in. The upstairs, which is really unfinished, in pretty bad shape, will be converted to either 2 apartments or 3 max. Right now, there's no sprinklers in the building. The water line is right in front of her building, and she's debating whether or not to put sprinklers in the building. She probably will. And if she puts 3 sprinklers in, she'll be able to get 3 apartments. Without the sprinkler system, she can only get 2 apartments, which means then we'll have to put egress stairs throughout the building.
All right, so this is right next to Nona Lucia.
Correct.
Yeah, right, the old Napa. And is the entire space gonna become retail now? I mean.
Downstairs will be retail. They're either going to be 1 store or 2 stores.
Okay.
And then the upstairs, which will have a separate entrance on the side, will be 2 or 3 apartments, depending on whether she sprinklers the building or doesn't.
Through the chair, now you're saying the downstairs, it will be how many square feet?
It's about 900 square feet each side. It's about 1,800 square feet.
Okay, I thought you said 10,000 square feet.
No.
Okay, and then also the apartments upstairs, so correct me if I'm wrong, if they sprinkle it, you'd be able to get 3 apartments up there?
Correct.
And if you don't sprinkle it, is this by fire law?
By building code.
Building code?
Right, you can only put 2.
2. Now, if you only had 2, would there be 2 areas of access,
Egress.
You'd have to have an egress on both sides of the building, correct.
With it sprinkled or not sprinkled?
With non-sprinkler. If we sprinkler the building, we only need the 1 egress.
Okay, so if you don't sprinkle the building, you're gonna need
A double egress, the second means of egress out.
Okay, very good, thanks.
I did, through the chair. That second means of egress, is that enclosed?
It will have to be covered. It won't be enclosed.